Hi. Hey. I'm going to plug in my cell phone and check who's watching this. Hi. It's John. I haven't been on YouTube for a long, I don't know, 10 days or 8 days or. Actually, less than a week ago, I uploaded a YouTube Shorts video, so I've been doing videos at least once a week. But it was some other one of my mom at Busch Gardens from like a few years ago with my sisters and my niece, my older sister's daughter or whatever. It's about Italians or something. So this is really amazing. This is really amazing. And actually, that video is kind of cool. It got the most views I've gotten for a YouTube Shorts video or whatever. It's pretty good. And it's my mom in the video, so that was pretty good. And my sisters, but Danica and the kids are in Texas, and here's my daughter Ayla. I'm gonna play this for you. She's with Nona in Texas. I was there too.
There's popcorn cheese.
Nona's my mom.
There he is.
Okay. So I'm hoping to get them, and I'm still hoping to get them. It's been anyway, but this is that's her and the kids, Danica and the kids. That's Ayla and my two sons there. This is amazing. Check this out. If you've ever thought the South was a bunch of rednecks and Southern racist people and stuff like that, it's not at all. Okay, look at this. This is the timeline, I think, of the South, or the timeline of the Civil War. Look, 1861. The United States goes back to the 1600s, before all this, when there was Blackbeard and these really weird things happening. And an Italian started all of America, Christopher Columbus. Before all of this, the quote unquote South was only really called that from 1861 to 1865, and then after they lost. It was a short-lived thing that was only a few years when they tried to fight all of the United States. Look, January 1861. The war only lasted until 1865. It says the South secedes. It wasn't called. I think it may not have been called it may have been called the South a little bit before that, but really there were no Southern states until they called themselves that, and they fought against when Abraham Lincoln. They wanted to get rid of Abraham Lincoln because he was going to get rid of slavery, and they made a big argument about it, and then they lost. It was a few years they fought. There was a real war, a civil war. So the South didn't really exist before that. It was America. There were no Southern states before 1861, and then they lost in 1865. So it was only a few years that went on. And before all that, it was Blackbeard and these really weird, cool things. And okay, this is something interesting. If you think slaves are that bad, this is why slaves were brought to America, because God was angry with the way they were living their lives. They were maybe living lustful, fornicating, adulterous lives with no rules, no God or Jesus. Some of them maybe could have been wicked. They had these weird religions that were not as good. So it was a way for the people who happened to be white people in America to show them God and Jesus, which in an awful way happened to be a slave. But there was so much craziness. It was worse than the Wild West back then. People were killing people. dying in the winter of like malaria, and like it was crazy as crap back then. It might have been like a war just to be alive back then, just to be around back then. So a slave may have had it kind of good, like they were protected and they're paid for, all their food was paid for, and but some of them had it pretty bad. They must have whipped them and stuff and hurt them and stuff too. But even the regular people back then got shot at and crap. There's this guy named Blackbeard, and think about this: in wars, which were more common back then, and it's pretty crazy because they could come back, but hopefully not. It's been pretty good. There haven't been many. There may have been small skirmishes in America, but there hasn't been much war. I've been eating a little more food. It's a low angle on my face. I don't look the best right now. So this is me right now. So here's the interesting thing about Blackbeard. Well, Al had a hat. Al had a hat that said Blackbeard on it, and so I looked it up, and he was from North Carolina. And Al really likes North Carolina. He hung out at Asheville, and it was like some cool kind of hippie place or something. And I think he had been going there. He was raised in New York, but I think his mom and dad went down there at some time when he was a teenager, but I don't know if that's true or not. And then he eventually liked it down here in Virginia and in North Carolina. But there's pretty much like there was no real South. It started in 1861. All this like really cool, weird stuff happened before that, like Blackbeard and Christopher Columbus, who was an actual Italian who discovered America, or started the white people coming here, who are technically maybe not even really all white, but mostly white. The people in the South were, and from England and various places where they came to America. So and then they mixed with the Indians, but it must have been like a war zone sometimes just to be alive in America back then, with the disease, the cold in the winter, the Indians fighting people, and they had different animals back then. They had more mountain lions and stuff. Maybe I don't know. I don't think that's that bad of a problem. But those are extinct on the East Coast, I think. But there's some maybe down in Tennessee or further south. I don't know, or somewhere. Maybe they're not even in Tennessee anymore. I don't even know. And so the North. So I don't know, but it was so cool to see that the South only really started being different from the North like in 1860. Well, pretty much in 1861, or it may have slowly kind of, they're a little different, and it wasn't really a problem until 1861. It was only for a few years, and then they lost. They're angry, and they're angry that Abraham Lincoln got elected, so they started seceding from the Union and calling themselves Southern. Like they said, this is a Southern state, and then by 1865 they lost, so it was only a few years of that, and then they kind of remembered, oh, well, we're the South or whatever. But the cool thing is that before all of that, the real history of the South is people like this guy Blackbeard, and I'm going to show you this article. This is so cool. Okay. I'm going to show you this article about Blackbeard. This is really cool. I got the idea to look him up. I mean, I just looked him up because Al had a hat that said Blackbeard. Okay, this guy was from the South, or lived in the South in North Carolina before the Civil War. This is what they looked like. Look, some people back then, they're so weird. Blackbeard. This is like what the South was like. This guy had a black beard. He was like really weird. I think that's a real artist depiction of him from back then. That must be what he looked like. And he would put like, okay, look at his hair, how they're, well, I don't know why his hair looks like it's on fire, but I don't know, that's him anyway. I don't know what that has to do with anything. This is Blackbeard. This is the history of North Carolina and the South. This is before, this is some of the history of the South. This is what it was really like. It's cool. It's kind of cool. And, I'm not a pirate, but Al had a hat that said Blackbeard in his new video on his channel. I can show you. I'll go to his channel. Here's his channel. Watch this. Unless. Amen. Oh, this was really weird. Watch this guy. This guy gets knocked down by God. God strikes this guy down. And he was okay. I had to look up the video and find out what happened to the guy, and it looks like he's okay. It looks like he's okay. I had to find the video. It was on Instagram. Anyway, let me find Al's channel. He has a hat that says Blackbeards. Like everyone's a Blackbeard. Wait do you hear this story about Blackbeard? It's so cool. But he was a pirate. And see, here's the reason why it was okay that he killed. Because it was almost like a war. It was like he was going to war and he was the captain of the ship. So there's a chance he could have made it to heaven. Because in the Bible, wait till you hear the interesting stories about him. It's just a page long of stuff. In the Bible, is it okay to kill in a war? In a war. What you never want to do in real life. The only way to being saved is with Jesus, okay? Unless you have to fight in a war overseas. And still, you can't do it in a mean, bad way, or you could still be judged and end up in hell if you do it the wrong way. It's okay, just believe in God and Jesus and do what you think is right with God and Jesus, and read as much as you can about it in the New Testament and the Bible if you want to know more, and read Scripture and find out more about what God is really like. God is way more cool. God is way more cool than Blackbeard. God is way more cool, actually, and beautiful and good and kind than Blackbeard or any cool person ever. He was the coolest, most brilliant artist to have ever existed, because he created all of us with our stupid little kinds of art that we try to do and our work that we try to do with our tools, acting like we're so big, like some man who knows the best or something. And we have to be childlike to enter the kingdom of heaven. But also, a child on earth is different from a man or a woman. And a man generally would work, the Bible kind of said, and a woman didn't have to. She was there to raise kids and be there for her husband as his helper, and he was the leader in the family. And they had various roles, and they're equal. They're of the same flesh. But if the husband wants her to work to help with the money, then I guess she's supposed to do that, because she's his, And so, and all of this is in the Bible. And what does the Bible say about killing in war? There are many wars mentioned in the Bible. War of conquest, Joshua 1:6, civil wars, 2 Samuel 3:1. They're not uncommon. It didn't just happen in the South one time. Even a war in heaven, Revelation 12:7. That's where now a war arose in heaven. That's where the Bible tried to. Michael and his angels. Fighting against the dragon, and the dragon and his angels fought back. He's the devil. The devil is the most physically beautiful one, so he started thinking about himself he was better than others, and he wanted to be like God, so he tried to rise up and fight God. So the only original thing the devil came up with was meanness, hurting others, negativity, attacking people, hurting them, everything bad, and it caused all our suffering, death, everything bad. When Adam and Eve ate from the tree of knowledge of good and evil, it made us aware of all that awful sin, and it got passed down through the generations. It used to live 1,000 years or 900 years, or I think Eve lived not as long, maybe 400. We don't know how long Eve lived unless it says. Well, that's on Earth, but God will let us know sometime. Eve didn't live as long. I don't know why, or she may have lived 1,200 years. I don't know. I don't really know, but I think she lived not as long because she was the one who originally ate the apple and got the most knowledge of it or something, which is not good. And they're equal. Woman and man are equal. Okay, I have no idea if she had more knowledge of it, but she gave him all the knowledge of it because they were equal. So they have the same knowledge, a man and a woman, of anything evil. Some may make it to heaven, some may not. And those people are doing this stuff like this in Africa. We're doing the wrong kind of religion, and God had them be slaves in America as one of their only ways they could get into heaven and find Jesus and be raised on God and Jesus, so those souls would make it to heaven, and they had to be slaves to be able to do that. But all these other people were dying of disease and war, and it was like a crazy, almost like this awful stuff happening. So for a slave, it may not have been as bad back then. It was like a really weird time back then. So anyway, this says this says wars involving killing. There's no way around it. We know murder is a sin, but what about the killing of an enemy combatant during wartime? First, we know that not all killing is in wartime is a sin, because there have been times when God himself commanded battles to be fought. God himself commanded battles to be fought. It's really weird that would... See, God is different from Jesus. Jesus is kind to everyone. Jesus is kind to everyone. And that's how we're judged. That's how we're judged on Judgment Day. That's how we're judged on Judgment Day, how Jesus-like we are. So you can't just... like if somebody went crazy and they thought, oh, well, God maybe ordered people to kill people, and then they could end up killing someone in real life and end up in hell if they like went crazy somehow. You have to have Jesus, and then you'll always be okay. Jesus is the bread of life that we need to live, more than anything else, more than shelter, food, anything else. The bread of Jesus, not real bread that you eat, but Jesus. That's what's meant by Jesus, and you have to understand more about that. And the more you learn in the Bible about it, well, actually, you may already know if you're raised that way on God and Jesus growing up. And God raised you too. God raised you too, not just your mother and father. So God raises all children, and you have to have Jesus. You have to have Jesus. And don't be tricked by the devil. Don't be tricked by the wrong ways. And here's the ways that you'll get to eat, because when you work in the Bible, it'll pay for your food. It'll pay for your food, or you'll just get food. You'll have plenty of food as long as you toil and work. That's what's said in the Bible. If you toil and or work, if you toil, you'll have enough food, and you should have enough shelter and keeping warm and stuff like that. If you just toil, which means kind of like almost like work, kind of like work or something like that. But God may mean God's work when he says work, and that means you always have enough. It may not be a real job, but God's work that children even do. So I think that's what's meant by work in the Bible. And we have to study it and really know and understand, because I don't even know if a man is supposed to work or just do, you have to look at what the word work means, and it's generally God's work. It's God's work. It doesn't really mean a paying job, but sometimes people really have to get a paid job that pays money. I don't know. And sometimes they don't. I don't know. But I know that you have to do everything for God, for the glory of God. So This has a bunch of scripture. This has a bunch of scripture from the Bible, and you know, and he said, no, a commander of the army of the Lord. Okay, I'm looking for. Okay, God took about 5,000 men and set them in an ambush between Bethel and Ai to the west of the city. So he commanded people, 5,000 men, to ambush people in a war and to kill others. You know, so God is different from Jesus, but you as a human being can't kill anyone. Don't kill anyone unless somebody made you go to a war. Try to never hurt anyone, because the way to being judged on Judgment Day, the way to salvation is through Jesus. You have to be like Jesus to get into heaven. You have to be kind to others. You have to forgive others. That's what Jesus is all. That's what we were missing in the Old Testament, that Jesus had to come to earth and show us, so we understand the gospel of Jesus and so much more that's in the New Testament. So we understand, you don't just go crazy and think, you could kill somebody or something like that. Because the Old Testament said it's a huge book. And to get that right is kind of difficult, but sometimes you can get it right when you first start reading it, when you really have faith. And so we really need Jesus to understand you're not supposed to ever hurt others. So don't go to a war unless you really feel like God wants you to, unless God makes you. God, may put you in a place, or somebody else's kid besides ours, hopefully to God, or they may have to go to a war. We don't know. God knows, and I don't want my kids to go to a war. I don't want them to have to kill anyone. And if I went to a war, I probably wouldn't shoot anybody when I was a kid back then. I probably would have just I don't know what I would have done. I don't know what I would have done. I wouldn't have been ready if I had to go to a war when I was 18, because you're not really a grown man or woman, and you're not a grown man or woman in the Bible till you're 20 years old. So when they send kids to war, whoa, that's pretty bad. But in the old days of the Bible, they didn't send them to war until they're 20 years old. So I don't know if kids are stationed in Afghanistan, made to go to a war, but if they kill people there, they're not really as liable as a man or woman for what they have done, the things that they have done, because if they had to. So I don't know how to judge that or not, or if they say that those people get into heaven or who are sent to the war is good or bad or what. But sometimes killing people in a war is okay. I don't know how to judge either of those. Only God is going to judge all those people. So I'm not going to say that's wrong or bad or good, but I don't want my kids to go to a war. I don't want my kids to go to war. I think it's better to be in a war when you're 20, how the Bible sent them to war when they're 20, if they have to go to a war. And I wouldn't want my kids to go. But we don't know what God has planned for us. But back then, anyway, that's pretty scary as crap. So this guy Blackbeard, which was just a fun guy who's from the South, I think, or from somewhere in Europe, and then he lived in North Carolina, I think. He's part of the history of North Carolina. Okay, let's read about him. But he was a pirate, but he was a captain of his own ship. So in a way, he was going to war, and he had to live almost like he was at war to pay, not just to pay his bills, but it was almost like a war zone, the things that were happening there. And there's a time to kill in the Bible sometimes, but don't ever do it. Don't ever kill anyone, because you need Jesus. You need Jesus who to get into heaven, or you'll be judged on the Old Testament as if there wasn't Jesus for you, and those people may end up in hell for all eternity unless they did it in a war, in a real war. But this was a long time ago when things, he may have literally been fighting his own war. So we can't judge Blackbeard. He may get into heaven, even though he may have been a bad guy and a thief, because he stole things, because he was a pirate or whatever, because that's supposed to be what pirates are like. But I don't know if he was a thief or not, or if people attacked him first. We don't really know, but let's read the story. So this is because Al had and I'm going to make sure. Hi. I don't look the best in this video. It's okay. I look like chubby, and I shaved my head really short, and I'm filming it at a low angle too. I didn't know I'd actually put a video on my channel. So this is interesting to see about Blackbeard. I really think this is an artist depiction of him from the 1700s when he was alive. I think that's an original artist depiction of him. It looks kind of accurate. It's pretty weird. Maybe he was a bad guy. I don't know, but Al had his hat on. It said Blackbeards, and it made me like the South. It was like, hey, it's okay, because I realized the people in the South only started about 1861, and before that it was so different. It was between England. First it was between England and the Americas, or whatever, the American people, and then when America won, it wasn't really called the South until 1861, and it only lasted a few years. They lost, and then it was America after that. So it's not really even the South, it's just the United States of America. but it's the South. Some people like it to call it the South and stuff. So, but I thought that was cool. He had a hat that said Blackbeards. I didn't know what it was when I saw it. I was a little worried about it, and I thought it may be cool, but it may be bad. So I looked it up. So it may have nothing to do with me. That Blackbeard may have nothing to do with me. But he's kind of cool, and you may like him and think it's interesting. So I found this good article, Royal Museums Greenwich. This may be Greenwich, Connecticut. I don't know. That was a Greenwich, Connecticut. I don't know if this is Greenwich, Connecticut. Anyway, I thought this site looked good, and so this tells a little bit more about Blackbeard, and it's really weird. He may have ended up in hell. Let's see. We can't judge him. Only God knows. He's resting. He is asleep somewhere awaiting judgment, like the rest of everyone else on earth who fell asleep after they died and is awaiting judgment. And this is Blackbeard. Who was Blackbeard? Blackbeard is one of the most infamous pirates who ever lived. But can we separate the facts from the myth? Blackbeard, or Edward Teach, born around 1680 to 1718. Wow, he died only like 38 years old or something, or 40 something, maybe 32. I don't know. He was called Edward Teach. So when you hear people acting like, yo, Teach, tell him what it is, or something like that, yo, Teach, tell him how it is, or something like that, it's because this guy existed in North Carolina, Edward Teach. So his name was Teach. And that's why they'd say, yo, Teach, tell him how it is, or something like that. Not in whatever accent they would say it in. You've heard that people say it before. So it might have been a white kid that thought South Carolina was cool or something like that. I think he was in South Carolina too. Let's read about him. Blackbeard, or Edward Teach, is one of the most infamous pirates to have ever lived. Known for his fearsome image, it looks like they designed the Johnny Depp character after him. I don't know. This is just because Al had the hat, so I thought it was interesting and good. Known for his fearsome image and daring acts on land and sea throughout the West Indies and along the North American East Coast. Wow. His fearsome image and daring acts on land and sea throughout the West Indies and along the North American East Coast. His legacy has been the inspiration for many depictions of pirates throughout history. Blackbeard's early life. Little is known of Edward Teach before his rise to pirate captain. He was a captain. It is thought that's what they called him. It is thought he began his life at sea as a British privateer in the War of Spanish Succession, 1700 to 1713. Here, he would have plundered Spanish ships in the West Indies for the British government. This is like how America started, with these strange things happening back then, like pirates were around. And here he would have plundered Spanish ships in the West Indies for the British government. After the war, his privateering turned to piracy under the instruction of Captain Benjamin Hornigold, rising through the ranks due to his naval skill. Teach soon became a captain in his own right. Blackbeard's ship. Around 1716, Captain Hornigold placed Teach in command of a captured sloop, and a year later, Teach took control of a frigate, possibly a 1710 Bristol-built ship named Concord. It is thought Concord was stolen by French privateers who used a slave ship and renamed it La Concorde. Finally, it came into the possession of Teach, who renamed the ship Queen Anne's Revenge. This became his flagship vessel. While the ship was only in use for a year, Teach sailed to the Caribbean and captured multiple ships, building his flotilla in fortune. He was a Spaniard, I guess, unless he fought against him, I don't know. Few could compete with him and the Queen Anne's Revenge, unless he was black. I don't know. That shows kind of what he looked like. He had a black beard. In 1718, few could compete with him and the Queen Anne's Revenge, which boasts 40 guns and a crew of 300. That was back in the 1700s. In 1718, Blackbeard scuttled the ship near Charleston, North Carolina, and moved his crew onto a smaller sloop named the Adventure. In 1996, the remains of the Queen Anne's Revenge were discovered offshore of Atlantic Beach in North Carolina. That was in 1996. The ship was identified by a series of coins. This is real life, bearing Queen Anne's bust, 1702 to 1714, and her successor, King George I. They had coins on the ship. This was in 1996. They found his ship with coins on it. It must be worth, I guess, millions or who knows what. After over 10 years of excavations and underwater archaeological digs, the divers have now recovered more than 250,000 artifacts from the ship. These findings include huge cannons from all over Europe, from Sweden, England, and France. Many of these items can now be found at the Smithsonian Institute in Washington, D.C. Blackbeard's appearance. Teach inspired fear in those who came face to face with his daunting appearance. With an enormous black beard reaching his waist, Teach reportedly lit fuses in his long hair, giving him a crazed and frightening appearance. Stories of his misdeeds spread, and fact and fiction blended into one. Tales of torturing prisoners, unless he was a bad guy and went to hell or something. I don't know. Tales of torturing prisoners, even turning on his own crew with no warning, were rife, and provided the pirate captain with an excellent method of maintaining order. This added to the image of terror and strengthening his position with both his crew and enemies. His flag depicted a skeleton stabbing a heart. This is awful what I saw of this. Because a heart is love. That means God. That means God's love. God created love. God is love. And this is awful. His pirate flag showed a skeleton stabbing a heart with a spear and toasting the devil with a glass in his other hand. It showed the danger that Blackbeard brought in his alliance with the devil. Well, that's what they think. Oh, like he acted like he wasn't afraid. He was like a beast in nature, like an animal, like not afraid to fight him or kill him like in real life. I think that's how those people in war are. They're like somebody like Mike Tyson who can fight any of them with his bare hands, except they like take it to this really big level and get people like to kill others for him and stuff. So if that's pretty much what war is, it's bad, but it may be good. I don't know. It may be good. I'm just not too into it. But if it's on Earth already, you know, we read the scripture from the Bible. It said God commanded an army to fight, so to attack others, 5,000 people or whatever, a long time ago, and many wars with millions of people back throughout in all of history, billions of people or whatever, and so this is a technique he used to instill fear into his enemies and to let them know just who was attacking them. That's awful. Can you imagine that flag? So we can't even judge him based on this flag. We can't judge him. There's some way he may have made it to heaven because it was kind of like a war. But this flag is awful, showing a spear. He could have been pointing towards a heart. No, but it was like, it looks like, well, it didn't stab it. It didn't stab the heart. Maybe this wasn't even him. Maybe Blackbeard knows what it meant more than anyone else, but he was toasting. They said he was toasting the devil and stabbing a heart, but this, and it looks like there's blood coming out of the heart, so I don't know. For all I know, it could have been who knows what. We can't judge him. Only God knows if he made it to heaven or not. Ew. So then, well, this is interesting. Where did Blackbeard live? In January 1718, Teach formed a base on Ocracoke Island just off North Carolina on the eastern seaboard of the United States, then known as the British colonies. This is real life. It's not a movie. From here, he continued his acts of piracy, such as bribing the local. From there, he did bad things. This is a pirate. And from there, he did bad things like bribing the local, I don't know, whoever he was, a pirate, the Governor Charles Eden, for a royal pardon and gaining the title privateer to provide a legal backing to his actions. So he followed the law that was the government's law too, but as far as the Old Testament, he maybe didn't follow it, and he was a real private. Maybe he was. Maybe I don't know if he started his own army or what, because there are countries where people take over the entire United States. I don't think they're going to do it in the South, because the South and the North is not different anymore. You know, all the businesses are they're in various places in the United States, like all those food chains like Taco Bell, McDonald's, Burger King, all the food places that we know of, that where we get our stuff, and all the big businesses, they're in places that we don't know if they're the North or South. I don't know why they keep calling them Southern and Northern. But if it makes people feel happy, that's good. You know, if they feel good to be from the South or whatever, I don't know. Maybe they'll get rid of it. So I don't know what's going to happen, but that's up to the United States government. And I'm just some entertaining kind of person who's just doing this for entertainment. And I don't want to be involved in swaying things politically one way or another unless it's for God or Jesus. Unless it's for God and Jesus. You know, if there's something good about it. But I'm not going to be the only one in the South who's like, get rid of that Southern stuff, everyone, or something like that. It's just, I don't know what to say about it. I'd rather just not ever comment on it. I don't know. So, but if you have to, it's what God wants us to do. Different human beings on earth, we may have to be brave and stand up for what's right, like Jesus did back in the time when he was looked at as an outsider or a weirdo, different from everyone, or weird person different from everyone else, who were the Pharisees, and how the law was back then, which was a distorted version of how the Old Testament really said to be. And so Jesus knew what was true because he was really God's son, and he was there to speak up against how the world had gotten wrong and sinful and bad, and he was our only hope, and is our only hope to get into heaven, Jesus. And so he did what was right, even though he didn't fit right in with everything all the time. But you know, if I don't want to live my life that way, I don't want to. You know, if that's what I have to do, just to, you know. But I maybe, I don't know. I have to. Maybe I have to. I guess I have to live my life just like Jesus, or else there'll be no hope for me to get into heaven. So I got to be like Jesus no matter what. And Jesus suffered for us, so it's not as difficult for us. But we have to be just like him. We have to go up against, willing to be as kind to others, as forgiving, as brave, to stand up for however diverse or different it may be, or closed-minded or open-minded, however it may be out there around people. We have to be Jesus-like and kind and do our best God's work. So I went out there yesterday. I went out there a little today, but not around people. But I went out there yesterday around my, I don't know, some other human beings. But and so this Blackbeard guy is interesting. I'll probably have to take the video down. You know, it just feels something feels bad about it. Like maybe I shouldn't even make a video. But I thought this was interesting, and possibly his most brazen act. I'll finish the video so you can hear about it. The guy. Teach uses flotilla to blockade the port of Charlestown in the province of South Carolina. Over the course of a week, 9 vessels were plundered as they attempted to sail out of the harbor where Teach's fleet was moored. Teach informed some of his prisoners that his fleet required medical supplies from the colonial government of South Carolina, and that if none were provided, all would be beheaded and their ships burned. Like he literally said, I'll just burn them. I don't know. He said, I'll just burn all them to the ground and behead them. I'll kill all. He said that. I didn't say that. I don't say that. I'm an actor. See? I don't actually want to kill anyone. But this is how that guy Blackbeard talked. And I just, you don't, if people, you don't want to say those things to anyone in real life unless you're joking about it. Okay? And then don't even joke about it ever, unless you're in a comedy club and an expert at it, or on YouTube and you're a really good comedian and you know that it's politically safe and you can't get in trouble for it. No, that's not why. It's because it's bad to say you might want to kill someone in the heart. It's bad to say you might want to kill someone with all your heart. When people get angry and they say they'll kill somebody, it's wrong and bad to even say with all your heart that if you ever thought that about anyone. But I think everyone may or may not hopefully nobody messes up that bad, but sometimes people mess up and they say things out loud, but they wouldn't actually kill them in real life. But he actually killed people in real life, so don't be like this guy, But some people are brave, they have this on their actual site. This is Royal Museums of Greenwich. This is history. This is in the Bible too. The most godly, good book we have on earth. The greatest book, the most good book, tells about the devil, who's the most evil killer of all time. So I don't know. Maybe I sinned too much and I deserve to feel bad about it, but I don't know. If I had ever thought those things a long time ago, like anything mean, sinful, that the devil tricks everyone into thinking that garbage. Praise God, praise Jesus, protect me from evil. Okay, Blackbeard in January. Okay, and possibly he plundered a bunch of ships and really tried to. He was threatening that if he didn't get medical supplies to his pirate people or his ship people, all would be beheaded and their ships burned if they didn't give him medical supplies. 2 pirates and a prisoner were sent to the town, but when they did not return, he moved 8 ships into the harbor, causing panic and looting within the town. Shortly after, supplies were delivered and the prisoners released after reportedly being robbed of all worthy possessions. The siege represents the height of Teach's notoriety, not just as a skilled captain, but a fierce leader who was not confined to the sea and would maraud where he pleased. Exploits such as these made Teach one of the most commonly reported pirates in the news and in the print of his age. This may be what he really looked like. This may be what his face really looked like. If this is a real work of art from, this looks newer. I don't know. This looks like by Jean-Léon Jerome. Yeah, 1863 to 1930. This work of art, 1863 to 1930. This is a newer work of art, so I don't know how they know what his face looked like in that, unless they. How did Blackbeard die? Edward Teach died on the 22nd of November, 1718. November 22nd, 1718. His exploits had become too bold and he had no. I don't want to die on November 22nd because I know he's not me. His exploits had become too bold. And he had angered Alexander Spotswood, the governor of Virginia. Wow. I wonder if he was like poor or something and hoping to finally have enough money. No. Spotswood assembled a private pirate hunters and they still thought he was too bold. Or if he was just literally killing people, because that's what he probably did. He killed people back then. He was probably bad. So, unless it was somehow kind of looked at as war or something, and God let him do it, and somehow he'll be judged and make it to heaven. I don't see how. With some of those people, we don't know. And you have to be Jesus-like to make it into heaven. If they just killed somebody out there in regular society, they're probably going to go to hell. But I would never want anyone to do that ever. So his exploits had become too bold, and he had angered Alexander Spotswood, the governor of Virginia. Spotswood assembled a private hunters, and he was in North Carolina. Spotswood assembled a Blackbeard was in North Carolina. Supposedly, yeah, I think that's where he lived, but I don't know. That's where he lived, I think. Spotswood assembled a private pirate hunters meeting to overpower Blackbeard's forces. The main pirate hunting ships were the HMS Pearl and HMS Lime under the command of Lieutenant Robert Maynard. Upon locating Teach and his pirates on Ocracoke Island, disgusting. Maynard blocked all exits and entered the inlet, hoping to surprise Teach and his crew. However, Teach spotted the ships and cut his anchor, attaching the ships outright with his cannons and destroying a third of the force in seconds. When the ships closed in, grappling hooks, smoke, and explosive grenades were thrown, and the pirates boarded the ship. Maynard had prepared for this eventuality by hiding the majority of his troops below deck and ambushing the pirate boarders. The ambush proved a success, and the pirates were overwhelmed. Teach and Maynard were reported to have fought man-to-man with pistol and swords. Teach was eventually wounded by one of Maynard's soldiers and overwhelmed by the rest of the crew. After the battle, it was noted Edward Teach had been shot at least 5 times and received over 20 blade wounds, making it difficult to tell what was the felling blow. The head of the infamous Blackbeard was hung from the mast, and all but 2 of the captured pirates were eventually hanged. 2 of them weren't hanged. Little wind and feather weather. This is Captain Maynard's log, who conquered him. Little wind and fair weather. This day I anchored here from North Carolina in the adventure sloop Edward Tackey, formerly master, a pirate, whose head I hung under the bowsprit of the said sloop in order to present it to ye colony of Virginia, and ye goods and effects of the said pirate I delivered to my commander's dispersal. That was from Lieutenant Maynard, who captured and killed Blackbeard. Log entry from 3rd January 1719. He's like a legend, and they didn't know what was real, folklore, true, legend, or what. But they kind of know some of it was real. They know this is history and real, but there are all kinds of stories about him, and people think he's cool. They don't know if he made it to heaven or hell. They don't know if he's good, bad. Some don't like him, some like him. Blackbeard's legacy. But he killed people, so that was probably pretty bad. Teaching his exploit, but I don't know. Because Abraham Lincoln was killed too. And I think the only thing he did wrong was he was going to get rid of slavery. And for that to be wrong, it's not that bad, I guess. I don't know. But the United States did win against the South. But, I was born in the South. I guess this is the South, I think. I don't know. Why would I say anything wrong against where I am, Can you imagine, living in a place like that and saying things like people in New York say, oh, they lost. Or something like that. They lost. Come on, face up. It's in the United States of America now. And then they come down, hey, and they try to make friends with people, and they're here now. And there are many northern people in the South, and there are many businesses, huge businesses that were based out of New York or California that are in the South. There are many southern businesses that are in the North, and all of the United States, and we're just the United States now. It doesn't matter if the South rose, or at one time they became the South in 1861 for a few years, and then after that they said, well, I guess they'll keep calling them the South, but because it kind of was a big thing that happened for those few years Before that, it wasn't the North and the South. Like all through the 1600s, 1700s, 1800s, until 1861, they started calling themselves the South. So it's a kind of new thing that just was only short-lived a few years, but it was such an intense thing that they kept calling the South and the North after that, I guess. So this tells a little bit more about him. Teaching his exploits have become the stuff off alluring, inspiring books, films, and even amusement park rides. Okay, that's his website if you want to go to it. rmg.co.uk, Royal Museums, Greenwich. And here's this other article. The history of the South and the Civil War. 1861. I don't know what this is. I think it wasn't called the South before then. So I noticed Al had a hat that said Blackbeards, and I thought it was kind of cool. It was interesting. Made me kind of like North Carolina. It was interesting, the story about that guy. Okay. So I'm going to go. Here's Al. You can go to his channel. Here's what he calls it. Dreamy Dreamland or whatever. But all you have to do is look up Owl Bob. Google. Owl Bob. Let's go to images. Well, yeah, he shows up in an image search. Maybe right up at the top of this video I just uploaded of him. I don't know. Because Owl Bob is not that common of a thing that people would look up, but it's kind of common. Owl Bob. So it shows up on the Google search result. And here's for videos, it shows right up. Yeah, it's at the top search results for videos. You can look up my videos, or better to look them up on YouTube. Then you can find his real channel, Owl Bob. His stuff shows right up when you search Owl Bob. And look for his stuff instead of just mine if you want to click on his videos. And
good morning, good evening, good afternoon.
If you want to subscribe to his videos, go to his channel. Okay, bye. Praise God. Praise Jesus. Bye. I'm going to go. Believe in God and Jesus and you'll be saved. That was the story about Blackbeard. Bye. Only God can judge him. And all of us. Okay, I'm going to go. Bye.